As you know, the 13 British colonies were set up along the Atlantic coastline and were split up into 3 different divisions: the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. Now, these colonies were categorized in these ways because of the geography within the land that they were settled on. So the New England colonies had certain characteristics of the environment that the Southern colonies had completely different. And those differences really drove the identity of the colonies, and they added to the economic input that each individual colony had towards England.
Another popular topic on the Regents exam revolves around what the economies of the 13 original colonies were focused on. So if we look at New England, so again, remember, New England is Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. Remember, Maine is not part of the 13 original colonies. It's part of Massachusetts. This is a critical difference between the North and the South. So in New England, the agriculture is really pretty bad. It's not very good. The soil is pretty rocky. It's not particularly warm. It's fairly cool. The growing season is pretty short. So as a consequence, they have to do something different. And you can see a whole bunch of fish and whales out here. That is a huge part of the New England economy. They're whalers, they're fishermen. They harvest whale blubber for a variety of things, including candles and oil to power lamps. They also have some pretty important ports, especially Boston. And Boston becomes an economic hub of the early colony. They have a tremendous amount of economic commerce going through the port of Boston, lots and lots of trade. There's also a considerable amount of beaver pelts and other parts of the fur trade, along with shipbuilding. You also start to see foundries in New England as well. And these foundries are important because this will ultimately be the distinction between the North and the South. The North has the beginnings of manufacturing, even in 1750. You can't really grow cotton in the North. So consequently, you don't see slavery as prevalent in New England as you will see in the Chesapeake region. We just can't grow the same types of agriculture. Now, of course, there are some farming areas here, right, in New England. But by and large, New England, economically speaking, is based around their deep water ports, shipping, trading, whaling, etc. Now, if we look at the middle colonies, and the middle colonies or the mid-Atlantic colonies refer to New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, you'll see that wood is a big part of it. And just living in upstate New York, you know that there's lots and lots of trees up here that we can harvest. However, and by the way, trees are super important because trees are what ships are made of. And ships are very, very critical to the English Empire and how they sort of control it. Upstate New York is a little warmer. Yes, we have lots of fur, and yes, we're raising domesticated animals. But the Hudson River Valley specifically has a tremendous amount of agriculture. Even if you drive through there today, you'll see that. And not only does the Hudson River Valley, but if you go west into the Schoharie, Middleburg, Cobleskill area, the Schoharie Valley, you will also see a tremendous amount of agriculture there as well. And that sort of fits the bill for a lot of what you see in the middle colonies. It's sort of a mix. There's lots of agriculture, as I mentioned, but there's also some economic industry, some foundries and things of that nature. There's some shipbuilding, some whaling, and of course, New York Harbor. Now, New York Harbor is going to go on later in the colonial experience to be just this tremendously important deep water port, which will serve New York very well, and the Hudson River up into the Albany region, Schenectady, Troy, Saratoga region very well. It serves us very well. Now, on the other hand, the story in the South is pretty much the same. It's agriculture. So whereas New England is trade, the middle colonies are agriculture and trade, the southern colony is agriculture. They're growing lots of tobacco in the Chesapeake region, lots of farming in other areas. They're growing tobacco, rice, indigo, which is like a dye that comes from plants. You're not seeing any of what you saw up here, this iron and lumber. You're not seeing any of that down here, right? And again, this ripples out through the course. When we talk about the Civil War, this is a predominant reason why New England and the middle colonies have a tremendous economic advantage. They are way, way ahead of the South in terms of their economic output. It's also important to recognize that it's much warmer in the South. It's much warmer in places like Jamestown, for example. This is why tobacco can grow here. And tobacco is an incredibly labor-intensive crop. And because it is such a labor-intensive crop, originally Southern plantation owners used Native Americans and then indentured servants. And after Bacon's Rebellion, you start to see the codification of what's known as chattel slavery, or what we just know as slavery today. The enslavement of African Americans, or in some cases Africans, kidnapping them from the slave coasts in Africa. So these are the basic economic output for the 13 original colonies. New England is largely trade, wood, whaling, fishing. The middle colonies is largely agriculture with some industry mixed in there. And then the South, of course, is tobacco and other high maintenance, high labor intensive crops.
To design your own colony, we are going to use a website called Sketchpad. And here you can actually draw out and design what your colony is going to look like. So there are various tools you can use, various brushes. So this really gets your creative ideas flowing. So some guidelines: you have to draw a colony, and this can just be like a small little settlement. It doesn't have to be a full large colony. But you have to give examples of geography that would make your colony successful. So my example, my little colony is going to be a little fishing village. So here I have a very crudely drawn house nearby water. So I could draw some ports or fishing cabins or anything that could help in that economic standpoint. So I would draw this out and draw the rest of the layout of the town out that would make a stable, solid, and supportive living town. Then after you're done, go to export, and you can download it and save it as a picture onto your laptop or your desktop or whatever platform you're using this on. And then later you will upload it. Now granted, settlements and colonies never truly worked out as planned, laid out like this, because there were always things that came up, like famine or natural disasters or wars or something. However, let's pretend that this is the best case scenario and everything is going to work out well. So do your best to design a wonderful little colony. Let your creative minds flow, but try to stay relatively realistic, so no unicorn petting zoos or anything a bit too much. Remember that this is in the 1700s or earlier, so you have to think of what the technology back then was for them to be able to use their geography to make an impact on the economy.